Brilliant. The creation of surfaces. So, 1902, Osborne Reynolds has written this paper, which is the introduction to his 1903 Some Mechanics works. I always felt there was a missing link, a missing paper, and Grock just said, well, it's this paper. So 1885, idea of dilatancy in materials, material science, and granular behaviour, creating gravitational effects inside an envelope when you have granular solid, acting as neither fluid nor liquid, so they say. Why does it create a surface? The Reynolds shows in this presentation in 1902, so in the introduction it's a presentation that he gives to the fellowship of the Royal Society, of which he's a member. Lucky guy, right? He gets to have these amazing ideas, and it's called On the Inversion of Ideas. The paper is called. And so he's daring to switch perspectives, as I have dared, and as the pirates have dared, to switch perspective and to look from the other direction. And so this is 1902. And so what he's saying is that the ether exists. It's a mechanical system with a vortex architecture. He's not worrying about the vortex architecture. He's assuming that vortex architecture constructs the grains, and these tiny grains, the particles, then create surfaces, gradated layers. So they don't, when you have a mixed up system, entropy will lead to a surface. Why? That's my hypothesis. Why? Because when you get inside a grain, you see the vortex architecture. It creates a 2-to-1 ratio of expansion to compressive force. Inside a grain, there are 6 normally piled grains, force grains, of expansive force. And they exist as a dot point of expansion, and that's membrane force stretching. So the power there is membrane force velocity of stretching. How fast can the material stretch? That's the limit of expansion. There are 4 of those arranged on the equator, and then there's one on the top and one on the bottom. And they're normally piled. And those surfaces, the speed, the velocity of stretching is controlled by the bending moments being outside the mass, following that law, that the centroid of bending must be outside the mass. And so the surfaces are linked together, and the 6 is the minimum. Group 6 piling is the minimum you need. 5 is unstable, so 6, and because it doesn't create a sphere. So 6 normally piled spheres of expansive cavitation creates a separate membrane around it of temperature and sound. So it's as it's expanding, it's making a sound, and that sound has is grouped as a harmony of the 6, forming a separate membrane around it, and that's Reynolds grains. Now, surfaces. Look at the relationship. So what I'm saying is, when you compress down, start here, just take the top and bottom and compress them together, and then look above, you'll see that 2 of the 4 must move apart, or there must be the vector potential for it to move apart. It gets ready to move apart. At the very thought of it moving apart, it recognizes that it can't move apart, because the surfaces the bending moments must be in each other's surfaces. And so there is a spark of light. A capacitance discharge occurs first at the moment of parting. So as the points open here, we prove that it's the light that happens first, because the light provides the link for the bending moment back to the center with a dimensional split, and so that the law of the centroid of bending being outside the mass can be at the center, the centroid, when that is the limit of entropy s meter 4. When you compress that down, the 4 expand. The expansive force is 4 moving exponentially away from each other in a square, and that is a greater force than the compressive force, and therefore the compressive force is created by the expansive force, and the expansive force creates the compressive force. in a circular system where the grains exist, right down here at the center. And so they're going to split that so that they're stronger as a disc than they are top to bottom. And Reynolds has the experiment in the 1902 where he takes the bag of sand and pounds it into a disc, closes the bag, and demonstrates that in fact when you turn it on its edge, it's super strong. When it's on its side, it's weak. You can compress it. That the dilation properties are different when it's arranged as a disc, because you've taken a surface that's been created and stood it on its edge. And so you see that it's the surface that has the strength. The square, the area has the strength. And that area has a limit, and it's tiny and massive. At the boundary between laminar and turbulent flow, the boundary of the membrane of these force, it becomes a flower of life, 6. And that the membrane of the grain becomes the outside of the universe, as the disc at the center between laminar and turbulent flow. That's a zone, that's the Goldilocks zone, that gets expanded between the surface of water and the ionosphere. And between those two boundaries, vortex architecture rebuilds itself. And so the description of the surface of the boundary between laminar and turbulent flow in the ether is the Goldilocks zone of the atmosphere, inside which we exist, and inside which we experience consciousness. And the consciousness is the flash of light that occurs each moment duration in the instant. And then the consciousness moment is the moment of the reflection that observes the reflection of the flash of light that just happened. So that the energy that you bring to the moment now is the light that shines on the moment that you're about to have. And that's the best way to experience how to be positive and how to fix this fucking planet with the truth. So when we breathe, we return the vial back to its energy state of a surface, and that's what inflates us. The moment of inflation in the blood, red blood cells are forced into the blood plasma as a mechanism of force from the human heart, which is the twist at the center of the universe. So inside this vortex architecture, the Goldilocks zone of the surface that's created in the vial, the boundary between laminar and turbulent flow, there is life experiencing itself, because thought is the first viscosity of light, the primary viscosity on which everything stands. I, the imagination, the imaginary number, you've got to believe it's real. So there you go, from 1902, Osborne Reynolds, a genius and an inversion of ideas, to now this Reynolds and a new perspective. Let's look again at Reynolds, 1902. Let's look at Levy. Let's look at the 1993 Domon Gogate circular concrete tanks without pre-stressing. Let's reunite the theories. Let's open the door to the ether, and the future has begun. It's as easy as that. But first you've got to want to believe it, because God's here. Yeah, He loves you, but you've got to want to come home. Fade out.